Hello teachers, and welcome to our professional development webinar series. This is number 2 and we're focusing on grading student writing. So when we think about grading student writing, it's really an interesting concept because when I talk to teachers, it's amazing how the conversation immediately goes to grammar, punctuation, and spelling. I hear things from teachers like, they can't write a complete sentence, or their punctuation is horrible, or their grammar is horrible, or this or that. Rarely does the conversation get to content until the very end of the discussion. It's actually reversed. We're going to talk today about some ways we're going to improve grading student writing. Before we do that, let's talk a little bit about what I call the LTD mindset. Now, when you hear LTD, what do you think of? Okay, so what could the L stand for, the T and the D? Sure, and if you are a car enthusiast, you might say, well, that sounds for limited. True, and I think that kind of goes along really well with what I see LTD as: learn, test, and dump. Now, it's interesting when I have conversations with curriculum directors and principals and even some teachers, and they say, well, no, we don't do that. No, our students don't just learn things and memorize things for a test. No. Well, theoretically they don't. But what's really going on? You see, we naturally assume that our children are gaining knowledge, right? That's what we want. That's our goal, after all, as educators. But more than often, children are learning information, just take a test, and they literally dump it. The retention level is so short. Okay? So the bigger concern is with mandated testing that you're approaching in your spring of the year. So what you're learning in August and September and October, will it truly be retained for the end of the school year? That's a concern. So how do you solve the problem? It's great, Mr. Butler, to bring up a problem, right? If you don't have a solution, then why are we talking about it? So my little solution is this. Your first move forward is writing. Getting your children to do more writing. It doesn't have to all be an essay format, but answering open-ended questions and moving all that forward, which is getting us to where we are today with grading this writing, because you see, a few things are backwards with all that, which we're about to get to. Now, I think we're going to do this. We have to address the number one problem: teaching in isolation. When we teach grammar, punctuation, and spelling in isolation, then that's what we end up focusing on. Okay? When the students aren't directly applying these skills to their actual writing, they're not retaining it. Okay? Because they're not applying it in real life situations. All they're doing is learning it, testing it, and dumping it to move on. And they don't retain and hold those skills, those values of the conventions. Whereas if we were actually applying this to student writing all the time, and that was part of a rubric, let's say, or part of an individual grade, then kids would see that and they would apply those skills in a much more meaningful way. So, let's talk about the red pen. I have nothing against the red pen, okay? I know there have been blog articles and academic articles and research saying, oh, the red pen's horrible. I don't think the red pen's horrible, personally. I think it's perfectly fine. A grade is what it is. But we have to talk a little more about how we get to that grade. And it's not just a grade for the grade book. But in the grade, the purpose behind it is to show progress, the milestones in what the children are doing in their writing, and to provide solid critiques behind that, so that when they get ready to write something else or to revise something, they know what to work on and how to fix and to change and to evolve as a young writer. Now, first of all, we have to talk about holistic content. Okay? Grammar, punctuation, spelling, not holistic. Content comes first. That's the holistic, the overall big picture of what they've written. So, for example, if you're writing about photosynthesis and the child has correctly communicated in the written word to you as the science teacher the process of photosynthesis, That's what you wanted, right? The grammar, punctuation, spelling, that's secondary, which may make you shake your head a lot and go, no, 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 because the ghosts of about 1,000 English teachers now are haunting us because that's what we pay attention to. I don't disagree with that. I just think it's secondary. And that's what we call the analytical side of grading. Okay? Get the content correct first, then focus on the analytical. And we've talked about that in our previous webinar about the success of teaching writing. And I still believe in that now when we move towards assessment and grading children's writing. Now, allow for revision. This is something when you grade analytical, if you truly want to get students to apply what they're learning in grammar, punctuation, and spelling as you're writing, as you're teaching those skills, then you have to allow time for revision. And I mean that after you grade something, grade it in pencil and say, all right, so Claire, in your piece of writing, you have several mistakes. That's why you made a 76 on this for your analytical writing, because you've got some punctuation, some grammar, some sentence fluency, some problems there that I need you to go fix. Maybe they're careless errors. Claire, do you not understand what you missed? Well, let's talk about it. Let's come to my desk. Let's do a tabletop discussion about what you've missed. I'm not going to tell you exactly what you missed. I want you to find it first. If Claire can't find it, then we help her to find those mistakes. Because if Claire can find it on her own, now she's applying that knowledge she's learned of grammar, punctuation, and spelling. All right, what I want to do is I want to talk about why we need this. Because to do this and break your grading of writing up into holistic and analytical doesn't make a bit of sense unless you have some value of why we're doing it. It all comes back to education and learning. So in order to learn, we have to think about our children have to understand what they're doing. Whether it's writing or math or science or social studies, they have to understand the concepts. And then our goal is that they retain this information and it becomes part of their knowledge base. Okay? So that'd be great. Understand it, retain it, build a knowledge base. All of those things equal learning. That's where learning takes place. And as Sir Ken Robinson says, if there's no learning going on, there's no education going on. If you're not familiar with Sir Ken Robinson, I urge you to find his TED Talks. Go to the TED website, TED, TED, and type in his name and search, and you'll find some great, and I mean great conversations, presentations about education and where we are, the learning process, the creativity in children. They're fabulous, okay? Now, if we have that kind of mindset as we go into grading to assess, here's where we go, all right? You can do amazing things in your classroom with your students because you're going to build engagement. You're going to create engagement of the process of whatever you're doing, whether it's writing or reading comprehension or math or science or social studies. Your children will be engaged in what they're doing. And they're going to be enthusiastic about it. And if they're enthusiastic, you're going to create enjoyment. And that means they're going to want to come back tomorrow. And they're going to can't fight to get there. They're going to not be able to wait to get there. They'll run to your classroom because learning can be a great deal of fun if they're involved and they're engaged and they're enthusiastic. Now, you can't credit me for these 3 E's. They belong to Dr. Joseph Renzulli, University of Connecticut at Storrs. He believes that learning is all about these 3 E's. Can those 3 E's be a part of your classroom? All right. Now, for learning and writing, let's talk specifically now about how we're going to make that happen. Why do children not like to write? Why do children get frustrated? Okay? There's lots of reasons why they don't like to write. Frustration's one of them. They can't get thoughts from here to paper. They get grades and they see that one grade and they're like, well, I made a 72 on this. I'm not a good writer. And they shut down. Or in actuality, if we had separated holistic and analytical, you'd have learned that Bill was a very good holistic writer, but he had analytical issues. Now, if you tell Bill, you made a 98 on this. Bill is pumped up. You're Bill's cheerleader. If you come back and say, Bill, you made a 72 analytical because you've got some punctuation, grammar, and some spelling errors. Let's fix those. you've got to give Bill time to revise that. And if he does, you change his grade. So you're teaching that application of the grading process. Okay? Now, let's take a look at a two-level grading approach. Every time your children write for you, whether it's an open-ended question or an essay or a project in project-based learning, go at it with a two-level grading approach, holistic and analytical, so that you can pinpoint for each student where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are. When you have weaknesses, it'll help you turn those into strengths with those tabletop discussions, critique, that feedback that they need to how to apply those skills, whether it's analytical or holistically. So let's think about holistic and analytical, because these may be terms you're really familiar with and maybe you don't. So in your world, have this discussion with your colleagues. You could pause the video here at this point and have a discussion on what you think holistic and analytical really mean. Now, that's something we've talked about it so far in the webinar. You have a little information. What does that mean to you? How does that affect your grading process? If you look at a piece completely holistically and then you look at it again analytically. First of all, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to grade this twice. Yes, you do. Holistically, it will not be as difficult to grade. You'll have a rubric to go by. Analytically, we're going to talk about pinpointing skills. All right, so now let's think about student-driven rubrics. If you really want your children to be engaged in the assessment process, of course, behind the scenes, you're creating the rubric. You know what you want to assess. The goal is to be very clever and lead them to help them fill out an assessment rubric. Holistically, what are we looking for? What are the things we covered in this unit or this particular mode of writing or whatever we're doing? Get that big picture down. What would give you 4 points for above average? What would give you 3 points for meet standards? 2 points to be below standards, and 1 very poor writing. Okay, however you want to do that, and you can do it 4-point scale, 6-point scale. You can do anything you want. That's up to you. It doesn't really matter. It's all going to come out clean in the wash, I promise. But what's the big picture? Get them to help you as you lead them through questioning to develop those big picture things for the rubric. And then switch to analytical. Boys and girls, what have we covered so far this year? What grammar rules or punctuation rules or even spelling rules, things we've covered that you feel like are important, along with your other conventions of writing like word choice and so forth, and fluency. So you put those things in the analytical rubric, and now you pinpoint. So if a child is having a real difficulty with spelling or punctuation or grammar, you can help them pinpoint where they've got to really work on turning that weakness into a strength. Now, we're going to take a look at a rubric here real quick. So on the board, you can see I have a rubric for a piece of expository, that we now call it explanatory, informative piece of writing. Okay? So to get full points, to exceed standards, an introduction uses a strong grabber lead sentence, a thesis statement that reflects the prompt, and provides a sentence with a list of the topics we discussed. Now, this is a 5th grade rubric, and this was developed by 5th grade students in one of my schools I did research with. Okay? They're the ones who thought this up. I led them. I kind of got them there, but it became their words. For the body paragraphs, a topic sentence with an appropriate transitional word or phrase. Defining detail to narrow the topic. Supporting details support the topic with more information. An example that explains in detail the real-life situation. A wrap-up which restates the topic and summarizes the paragraph. A conclusion that uses a strong re-grabber sentence that I teach. Providing a strong summary of the body paragraph, uses a conclusion sentence that restates the thesis and brings an ending to the essay. All of that is going to get 4 points. So 4, 4, 4, a total of 12 points. So what if you don't exceed standards? Maybe it uses a fairly strong grabber lead sentence, a thesis statement that reflects the prompt and provides a list of the topics we discussed. It's close, but it's fairly strong. It's not quite there. Here, a topic sentence may or may not have a transition. Or they're somewhat clear. Defining detail doesn't clearly define, but it's there. There's an effort there, we see. Supporting detail is good, but not very detailed, and they're kind of fluffy. The example is good, but not in every paragraph, okay? Wrap-up is okay. So you can see we're waning, okay? In the conclusion, uses a fairly strong regrabber sentence, provides a basic summary of the body paragraph, uses a conclusion sentence that restates the thesis and brings an ending of the essay. So it's fairly close to this. You can just see we're slipping down that slope. Okay? 3 points. So could a child have a strong introduction and get a 4 and then maybe get a 3 in the body paragraphs? Yes. Maybe they get a 4 in the conclusion. Okay? It can be any combination. And you add the points up, and that's where you get enough points, of course, for your grade holistically. You can see understanders, somewhat of a weak thesis, some effort towards a grocery list. That means they just kind of listed what their paragraphs will be about. They didn't go into detail and try to match that and disguise that. The list doesn't match body paragraphs. It's disorganization of it. No transitions. Topic sentences are not clear. No defining or real supporting details. No wrap-up. Missing paragraphs. They didn't write enough. Okay. Now you can see in 3rd grade we would suggest like 1 body paragraph, 4th grade 2 body paragraphs, 5th grade 3 body paragraphs, and that goes for junior high as well, 3 body paragraphs for your traditional 5-paragraph essay. In the conclusion, no regrabber, very weak summary of paragraphs, no closing statement. And then the 1 is even more fun. No effort, weaker no thesis, doesn't match the prompt. Only writes 1 or 2 body paragraphs, details don't match the topic, no example, no wrap-up. Student does not make an effort to write a conclusion paragraph that brings closure to the essay. So these are the words of 5th graders, everyday normal 5th graders. But when they were involved in creating this rubric and knowing they could get a total of 12 points, they very much understood what they had to do to get all of these points. It made a huge difference. Okay? Analytically, we are focusing on word choice and fluency. Okay? Use a strong, vivid vocabulary that is on or above the grade level of the student. Fluency, student fluently writes from one sentence to the next throughout the essay. That's going to get you your 4 points for a total of 8. If they don't write that level, uses fairly strong vocabulary that on the grade level of the student, student attempts to provide fluent movement from one sentence to the next in the essay. And 2 means uses vocabulary below the grade level of the student, student does not provide fluent movement from one sentence to the next in the essay. And 1, a preschool vocabulary, student does not make an attempt to provide fluency. So you can see a very easy picture. And you can select and say, okay, you did this and you did that. 7 points. It's that simple. And take some notes. The rubric is where it's at, friends. And especially if you get your students involved, because they have to use their knowledge that we hope they've retained from the lessons and weekly writer, as well as what you're doing with your students in your class, to come to this board here and write out a rubric that makes sense to you and to them. And you can make sure that they're going to retain this knowledge. Let's take a look at one. So Claire has written this about art. Let's read it through. Art is in the eye of the beholder. This great saying reminds me that art is something that people think about. They may think it is pretty or interesting or can take your breath away. I like all kinds of art. Painting, sculpture, and photography. Paintings can be realistic or the kind that you have to really think about. When an artist paints, he or she can use watercolor, oils, or acrylic. I like real paintings that make me think I'm there. At our local museum, there's this painting of a forest. I just want to run right through it. Paintings are one of my favorite types of art. Sculptures go back to a long time ago. There are many statues that have lasted for centuries. Most statues are of people, but there are statues of animals too. One of my favorite statues is of the Venus de Milo. The sculpture really makes me think about why the artist didn't want to put arms in the statue. Photography used to be really hard because you had to have a camera and get the film developed and all that. Now you can just shoot a picture with your phone. Then you can save it to your computer or push it out on social media. Photography is cool because you can save memories. Painting, sculptures, and photography are 3 kinds of art that I like a lot. Someday I want to be an artist and use one or all of these in the things I make. Overall, pretty good from this 5th grade student. And I have to applaud her. She did a really, really good job. If I go back now and look here, did she have a strong grabber lead sentence? Did she have a thesis statement? Okay? Is it pretty good? It's fairly decent. Her body paragraph, she had 3 body paragraphs. She's a 5th grader. I thought she did a pretty good job with this overall. And she had a pretty strong conclusion. Okay? But I might take off a little bit. Why? Because, well, this could have been stronger. Much of what she did in my world would be a 3-level piece of writing. And I'm going there because I don't think she had great analytical. If we're focusing in this lesson on word choice and fluency, the fluency of a 5th grader is much higher. The word choice is much higher. A 5th grader should be able to pick stronger vocabulary words than what Claire did. And the fluency is okay, but there are times a little rocky. It sounds way too personal. It sounds like she could have picked better words. And so her lack of word choice being smart interrupted her fluency. Okay? So like here, sculptors go back to a long time ago. A long time ago? Really? We could have been more specific with dates, right? Or centuries or whatever. Okay? Here, paintings can be realistic or the kind that you have to really think about. She's talking about abstract art. And you know she came across this in her research. Why didn't she use the word? What if she had said paintings can be realistic or abstract? Boom. Then she could have defined that as she felt like her fellow classmates or you wouldn't know what she's talking about. But this is a little, jumbly. Could have been stronger. So here's the grade I'm going to give Claire. Holistically, I'm going to give her 11 out of 12 points. I'm taking off a point from her body paragraphs. This is just an example, okay? So she's going to get a 92 holistically. And for this time of the year, for early November, that's about where I put her. Because I want to be your cheerleader. I want to encourage her. Analytically, I'm giving her 6 out of 8 points because of her word choice and her fluency. So when Claire sees her grade in the notes, great content, be sure to pay close attention to the details in your body paragraphs. Every detail must support your topic. They just work a little fluffy to me. That's why I took up a point. You had several issues with fluency and word choice. You have a wonderful vocabulary. Be sure to use it. Because we know Claire can do it, right? Be sure to use it. Your paragraphs did not flow as fluently as they could have. So she's going to look at that and go, oh my gosh, I don't want to see. I want this to be like this. As a teacher, I'm going to write these scores in pencil and say, Claire, I want you to go back and I want you to fix this. Then we can do a tabletop chat, which means I get down on her level and we talk about it and look at it. And I give her pointers and ideas. I'm trying to get her to find the mistakes. And what she can't find, then I can kind of point out and ask her questions. If I'm asking her questions, it's making her dig deeper. If I just tell her what to do, then I'm like, handing it to her on a silver platter and she's not learning. Remember, I need Claire to apply the knowledge from what she's already learned to her own writing. And if I just tell her what to do, it becomes a checklist and she does it and it's almost back to LTD mindset. Learn, test, dump. Okay. So she's going to look at that and say, I don't want to C. Well, Claire, you don't have to have C. I can become an A. I'll give you X amount of time. An hour, a class period, overnight, whatever to fix it. Come back and we'll talk about it. She might get this bumped up. She could definitely get that bumped up with some stronger word choice. And so what does Claire learn in the end? Claire learns how to do closer revision, closer editing, pay more attention to these things, to follow a rubric. All those things are really, really important. This should not be a slap on the hand and we're done. She should have the opportunity to fix it. And as we go through that, remember, Claire doesn't want, and neither does any of your students, want to revise and rewrite things over and over and over and over and over again. They want to get it right the first time. That's their idea. That's their mindset, whether they're typing it or handwriting it. So if we really push them towards really revising and editing before they turn it in, we're going to get stronger pieces of writing, as long as their mindset is good. All right. Now, Q&A. So since we're not on a live webinar right now, you may have tons of questions. And I want you to feel free to get those questions going there with your colleagues. Write them down. Email me if you would like. Darren, D-A-R-R-E-N, @vvclassroom.com. Reach out to me. I'll be glad to answer your questions. But I would really like you to get the questions going there with your colleagues. How can you apply this mindset of grading student writing to everything you do? Yes, it's going to be a little more work. I get that. No one gets that better than me. Trust me. But at the end of the day, you're going to produce lifelong learners. At the end of the day, you're going to produce children that retain knowledge. At the end of the day, you have the power to change the mindset of your children to be lifelong learners and not just LTD learners. All right, so let's go back now and think how you can turn around and teach this. If you're a team leader at your school, or if you're someone that wants to take the initiative and go back to a faculty meeting or a grade level meeting and teach this, remember, you can use this webinar. You can download the pre-questions and the post-webinar questions and get this discussion going in your classroom. If you need anything from me, remember you can always email me at Darren, D-A-R-R-E-N, at vvclassroom.com. Thank you for joining us for our webinar. I look forward to seeing you after the first of the year.